Hi, so it is April and it's C-section awareness month. So I wanted to come on and share the story of my first and second daughter's births. So my first daughter was due in May of 2017. I had a really great pregnancy. The first couple months of pregnancy, I was really sick, had a lot of nausea and vomiting. But I was just so excited to be pregnant with my first baby. My husband and I had been married for about 7 months when we found out we were pregnant with her. And we were both just so excited. We both knew going into marriage that we wanted to have like 4 kids. And so we were just excited to start our family. And I loved being pregnant. I had a lot of like back pain towards the end of pregnancy and was, even though I was like in a lot of pain, I was still like so excited to have a baby. So a couple of days before she was actually born, I started having contractions that would like the first day it started, it was like I had a contraction and then I didn't have another contraction for like an hour, 2 hours, and then I had one and they were very irregular. And then that night they started to pick up and increase in frequency. And so we decided to head on into the hospital, get checked out. And I was only like 2 centimeters dilated, but I was quite a bit past my due date at that point. So the midwife was like, hey, you're past your due date, so we can induce you if you want. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I had, at that point, I didn't really know a super lot about labor and delivery. I was working in postpartum as a CNA at the time, so I thought I knew a lot, but I really didn't. But I did know that being induced could potentially cause other interventions that could potentially increase your risk for a C-section. So I was like, let me go home and rest. So I went home, and actually the contractions like fizzled out. We slept, and that next morning, they kind of started again, but again, were really irregular. That night, they started to pick up a lot, and so they were coming way more frequently, and they were lasting a little bit longer. I was feeling them a lot in my back, and I was having a hard time sleeping. So I would like, we got our like bouncy ball, and I put it between like our bed and like the crib, and I would just like fall asleep like leaning on the crib, and then I'd wake up like 30 seconds later and have another contraction. So I was really tired. And another thing is that I really wanted to deliver her unmedicated, because again, I wanted to avoid a C-section. My dad's side of the family, all the women in the family have had C-sections, and my mom actually had a C-section with my oldest brother. So I was like, I really, don't want to have a C-section because we do want to have 4 kids, and I just really didn't want to have 4 surgeries. So, anyways, so the contractions get really close together, and I told Brandon, like, I think it's actually time. So like, let's go ahead and go on in. So we lived 5 minutes from the hospital at the time. So we got to the hospital, and they checked my dilation, and the nurse was like, you're 6 centimeters dilated. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So she was like, okay, let's get you like admitted and everything. So they got me into a room, and I was GBS positive, so they got my IV started. They gave me antibiotics, and we called my mom and my mother-in-law. They were going to be with us during the birth, and we were like, hey, like, it's go time, like, come to the hospital. So everyone's super excited. And once I got to the hospital, it was pretty early morning, maybe like 5 a.m. And once the day kind of got going, my contractions kind of slowed down again, just like they had been for the previous days before that. So I now know that I was in prodromal labor prior to going into the hospital. I was not resting at all. I was just like moving throughout everything, swaying on the birth ball. I didn't really know a lot about like position changes and stuff like that, to kind of like get my contractions to be longer and stronger. And so I was just breathing through the contractions. I felt I was coping pretty well. But time went on, and my midwife checked me and was like, hey, like, you've only dilated a centimeter, so I think we should break your water. So I was like, okay, like we can do that. So she broke my water, and then I labored like in the shower. And then they did have a birthing tub that I could labor in. So my nurse got me set up, and I believe they checked me before that, and I still hadn't progressed anymore. So I was in the birthing tub, and the water felt good on my back, but I was having a hard time coping with the contractions while I was actually like sitting down. So they were getting pretty intense when I was in the birthing tub. And my midwife did mention wanting to start me on Pitocin soon if I didn't make any change in dilation. So I'd always heard that Pitocin contractions were super intense. So I didn't really want to get it, but I knew that we needed to get, labor moving on. And so I also had planned on delivering unmedicated, but really didn't prepare for it. So I told Brandon, like, these contractions are getting super intense. Like, I don't know if I can do this without an epidural. I think I'm going to need to get one. And he's like, love, you told me to tell you no, even if you asked for one. And I was like, I know I said that, but I think I really need one. And I was crying at this point. And he was like, whatever you think, like, I'm in support with you. And so I got out of the birthing tub, and I was like, hey, can we try a breast pump instead of the Pitocin? Because I know that when you use a breast pump, your body releases oxytocin, and that's like the natural form of Pitocin. So that's what gets your contractions going. So my midwife was like, yes. So my nurse brought me in a pump. I did like a 15-minute cycle, and it did pick up the contractions. And I was, again, like, I had been feeling that back labor. So my back was really, really hurting during the contractions. And I started to kind of freak out and get out of control. And I was just like not breathing. So my midwife came in and was like, hey, like, let's breathe together. And she really helped me to calm down. And then my mom was praying for me. Brandon was praying for me. He was breathing with me through contractions. He was really, really helpful. And I calmed down. And then I believe she checked me again, and I was 8 centimeters. But by that point, I had been in labor for a really long time in the hospital. And my water had already been broken for a pretty prolonged period of time. And so she was like, I think it would be a good idea to get an epidural and to rest for an hour, and we'll see where you're at. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I ended up getting the epidural, and I slept for about an hour and a half. And my midwife came back in, and she checked my dilation, and I was 8.5 centimeters. She said that she felt my daughter's head, but she was posterior, and her heart rate started getting elevated, and I got a fever. So she was like, you're developing an infection, and I really think that you should just go ahead and go back for the C-section. And I was so tired at that point. I'd been up for days, and I was just like, okay, if this is going to be the best way for her to be born, like, yeah, I mean, we'll do it. So Brandon prayed for me, my mom prayed for me, and thankfully throughout a lot of the labor, I really did feel the peace of God, and we were listening to worship music and just kind of enjoying, the time together. We were laughing, and we had a lot of fun, like, moments on video and stuff. And so I went back for the C-section, and we actually didn't find out what we were having until I delivered. So the midwife is in the OR, and then my husband, and then the doctor, and of course, like, the birth team and stuff. And so they, like, did the incision, and my midwife was like, oh my gosh, baby has really long eyelashes, so it's probably a boy. And I was like, the whole pregnancy, like, I feel like it's a girl, but I don't know, like, it could be a boy, like, I don't know. And so they pulled her out, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, she's a girl. And we were just like so excited. And it was like so amazing. She had the, like, such adorable chubby cheeks, super long, gorgeous eyelashes. And they took her over to the warmer, and were like drying her off. And after they took her out, I started to feel like such intense like pressure on my chest and a lot of pain. And I started shaking like uncontrollably. And I let the anesthesiologist next to me know, and he gave me a really big dose of anesthesia. I started getting super sleepy. Brandon brought Hannah Grace over to me, and or actually, I believe it was the nurse and Brandon. They were walking together, and they put her little cheek against mine, and that was like super sweet. But I just knocked out, and then I remember waking up, and I was like in this bed, and I was like, I felt something on me, and I like looked down, and it was my beautiful baby girl, and she was latched on breastfeeding, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. You're our gift from God. And I just remember Brandon, he was like, I know you really wanted to breastfeed. So I let the nurse know, like, please put her in skin to skin. And so my nurse got her skin to skin and got her latched on. And it was such a gift, like such a blessing to just like wake up and see like my daughter breastfeeding. It was super awesome. And then of course, like my mom and mother-in-law came in and got to meet her. So yeah, so that was really awesome. But it was hard because I had like this idea of what I wanted for my birth, and it totally did not go as we expected. So that was really hard. Thankfully, my recovery was great, but I still had in my mind like I want to have vaginal delivery for my next child. So we, talked to the doctors about it and stuff, and they're like, yeah, like if you give it 18 months, like you can totally try again. And so that's our birth story with Hannah Grace.